What is going on, all you Pokemon collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the PikaPikaPaPa, and as I say every single month, this is my favorite data set that we look at, and we look at a ton of different data sets here on this channel. Now, as you can see in the graphs before you, on the one on the left, we look at the overall grading volume at PSA versus SGC, CGC, and Beckett, and then in the middle, you'll see that we have to pull PSA out so we can get some trend lines for those other three companies, because PSA, from a terms of grading volume, is just far and away above all of the other ones. So what we're going to do after we get through this first slide is we're going to look at PSA grading data, and we're going to dig deep, right? We're going to look at the most graded cards. We're going to look at the most graded sets. We're going to look at the most graded characters. We're going to see gem rates by era. We're going to look at all kinds of information. And the reason this is my favorite video is because ever since we started doing this in December of 2022, I always walk away with some incredible learnings. I learn a lot from this, and I can apply it to the way I'm collecting and investing. And I'm telling you, this has helped me make some great decisions in my Pokemon collecting and investing career. Now, guess what? The last couple years, we have seen a lot of positive trends, and I'm not saying that we're not seeing positive trends still, but the grading volume is changing. It is fundamentally breaking the trends that we saw in 2022 and 2023. It's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's just a thing. And there's a couple reasons that I want to highlight before we get into the data and tell you kind of why I think that we're seeing these trends and why it's not concerning me. Well, first off, we're at Scarlet and Violet. We're in the very beginning of Scarlet and Violet. Beginning of eras typically don't start off super hot. I know I'm really bullish on a couple of these sets, but not everybody is. So I don't think a lot of people are having those cards graded right now. The other thing, if you've been watching these videos that we've done the last couple weeks, you've seen that the overall gem rate, especially for Paldea Evolved, and then you look at, what else, 151, right? And then you look at Obsidian Flames. Like, the gem rate for those sets as a whole, looking at every single card that's been sent to PSA for grading, the overall gem rate is less than 40%, right? The print quality just wasn't great. So again, when print quality isn't great, you're not going to get a lot of them sent into grading. The other big thing that I'm noticing is the regression in the Japanese space. So middle of last year, PSA opened up a brand new grading facility in Japan. So no longer did they have to send the cards to the US, to California, to get them graded. They could just ship them within the country and get them graded there in Japan. And we saw a crazy spike in Japanese grading volume. And we've seen that really impact that market. So I think that's starting to chill out a little bit. I think it's starting to slow down. And you're going to see that in some of these data dives that we do coming up. So that's a high level to get off why I think that we're going to be seeing these different trends. But what I'm really watching for is, how is this video going to perform in the next couple months? Are we going to start to see, as we get some more sets from Scarlet and Violet, as we see all these awesome alt arts that are going for crazy prices, are people going to be sending them in and get them graded? Like, there's going to be a lot of learnings from this moving forward, and I can't wait to share that with you. So before I get into any of this, listen, if you guys enjoy this content, if you like this data-driven approach, hit that subscribe button. If you have questions or comments, drop them down below. And as always, if you like what you see, give us a big old thumbs up. So before we get into anything, we got to talk about the information that's in front of us right now. So there are three columns down at the bottom. The one on the far left is PSA grading volume, and you also down at the bottom have SGC, CGC, and Beckett. And as I said earlier, PSA is just so far and away. In the middle, we have to take PSA out so we can actually see the trend lines for the other three grading companies. And then on the far right, you have the actual number of TCG items that were graded in the month of April. You'll also see that there's a month-over-month and a year-over-year comparison. Now, last month, we saw PSA, just in total items that were graded, it was a record month for them. PSA has never graded as many cards in a single month as they did last month, which was amazing. But guess what? They're coming back down to earth this month. There's nothing wrong with that. It is really hard to break records every single month, but they're dropping pretty good. So if you look on that far right column, you'll see that there were 468,000 TCG cards graded at PSA. Well, guess what? That's down 9% month over month, but the one I'm always looking at is year over year. That is down 16% year over year. Now, for a lot of the reasons that I mentioned earlier, it kind of makes sense to me, but that is something that I'm going to want to keep an eye on as we continue to move forward. The other thing that I wanted to call out is, I have said for a long time, I am looking for another grading company to come and challenge PSA, right? All markets do good when there's an A and the B, right? Verizon needs AT&T, Sprint needs T-Mobile. Like, you think of all of these companies, they need a good competitor. Well, right now, PSA is in a land all in of itself. Well, if you look at that middle graph right there, hey, listen, the volume's not there, but look at the trend line for CGC and SGC. It's upward to the right, especially especially SGC. They've been having a really strong last, I don't know, 12 or 14 months there, and I really, really love that. Now, Beckett, I am a Beckett homer. I love Beckett. I want Beckett to do so well, but unfortunately, they're doing absolutely nothing in the grading space to give me any kind of confidence. SGC has been up, CGC is trending up, and Beckett has just remained flat for a long, long time. So as much as I'm pulling for Beckett, as much as I want them to do well, they just can't seem to get it together from a grading perspective. I think they've kind of pigeonholed themselves into this black label. I think people only go grade Beckett because of black labels, which I think eliminates a lot of the other grading opportunities for them. So I don't know if they're going to find a way to redefine themselves and make them kind of more than just a black label company, but we'll have to see. So with all that being said, this is the high level for these different things, and now we're going to start getting into the nitty-gritty of it, and I always start off with the most graded sets, and interestingly enough, but not surprisingly, English 151 is the top dog last month, right? There has been almost 102,000 total English 151 cards graded. It barely eked out Japanese 151, but guess what? When you look at the total grading volume, okay, when you see that graph on the far right, you have the year and the name of the set, and then to the right of that, that's the total number of cards that have been graded from those sets, right? And as I said, English 151 has 102,000 cards that have been graded. Japanese 151 has had 274,000 cards graded. Absolutely insane. And unless you've been sleeping under a poker rock, you all know that guess what's happening this month? There is a reprint of Japanese 151 that is hitting the shelves as we speak. So not only has there already been 274,000 of those graded, I think that we are going to continue to see more and more and more of them flood into the grading space, even though for me, it's kind of a tough pill to swallow. The gem rates are so high. There's so many PSA 10s out there. They just don't command a lot of value for me. I think that the sealed boxes still have some opportunity for long-term appreciation, but man, those PSA 10s are just getting crushed from the Japanese side of things. Now, the other thing I wanted to call out here too is look, there's 2 one-piece sets on here. I love it. Just like I said, in PSA needs something to challenge them. I love that one piece is coming out of nowhere and is now represented in a lot of these TCG graphs. Again, this has always been Pokemon, so I'm excited to see another brand come up and give them a challenge. Now, both of these one pieces are ones that are printed in Japanese. You got the One Piece Japanese promos there from 2023, and then you got the One Piece Japanese 500 Years in the Future set. Well, guess what? There are 3 Japanese Pokemon sets on here as well. And if you go back, if you watch this video from 6 or 8 or even 10 months ago, this was pretty much dominated by Japanese Pokemon sets. So we're starting to see a little bit of that transition, right? A little bit of the market shift that I was saying earlier on. We're starting to see more and more English sets pop up on here and less Japanese sets. So it's something to keep an eye on as we move into the future. And now remember, I did a video not long ago where I compared Japanese 151 to V-Star Universe. Now I think 151 is going to be on a whole level all in of itself, but the timing of everything was very interesting. 151 had a reprint after 9 months. Guess what? V-Star Universe did as well. Japanese 151 was a highly graded set. And if you look at Japanese V-Star Universe down there, 417,000 cards graded from Japanese V-Star Universe, and guess what? It still is in the top 10 most graded sets month after month. So just tons and tons of those cards being flooded into the market. So of course, now that we've talked about the sets, you know the next thing we got to talk about is the most graded cards. And before I get into any nitty-gritty on here, can we just sit back and appreciate the fact that, number one, we've never seen this before, and as I told you, we've done this video for a long time. But if you look at the very bottom of the PSA most graded cards, you got the 1999 Pokemon game Charizard Holo number 4 on there. I think that is really cool. Now, I will tell you this, that lumps first edition, Shadowless, base set 2, all of them are lumped into that. So I don't want people to think that, you know, when you look at the total graded in April 24, there's a 1.0. So there were 1,000 of those cards graded last night. That's not 1,000 first edition or 1,000 Shadowless. That's a mixture of all of them. But we have never seen a card like this on the list. And I think that is incredibly exciting. I think it's awesome. And it was just something I wanted to call out. Now, what we have seen on this list every single freaking month for as long as I can remember is that Pikachu with gray felt hat. I don't know how many of them they made. I don't know how many are yet to be sent in, but there have already been 38,000 of those graded. When you look top to bottom in the total all-time graded list right there, it only pales in comparison to the 1990 game Charizard we just talked about. 38,000 of those Pikachu with gray felt hats have been graded, which again is absolutely crazy. Now, Again, 2 one-piece cards on here, right? 2 Japanese one-piece cards on here. The interesting thing, and I called this out a minute ago, is there's only 1 Japanese Pokemon card on here. Again, if you were to look back at this list 6 or 8 months ago, this was dominated by Japanese cards. So again, we're just starting to see that market shift a little bit. And the final thing that I wanted to call out from this list that I think is incredibly cool, I already talked about Charizard, but guess what? Last month there were 3 Charizards on this list. So out of all of these different most graded cards, 3 of them had Charizard on them. Well, guess what? This month, 5 of them are Charizard. Charizard is getting a ton of love right now. We had talked about, hey, what is going to go on in this market? Is there anything that can pump some fuel on the fire? Well, right now, people seem to really be loving Charizard. He's got some awesome cards out. And again, in the beginning of Scarlet and Violet, outside of Charizard, we just haven't seen a lot of other big name chase cards. We haven't seen a big Umbreon. We haven't seen a Pikachu. Like, I get Morty's but that's not a Gengar card in my mind, right? Like, we're due a big, huge Gengar card with just Gengar on it. So I think there's going to be more excitement in the back half of Scarlet and Violet, but right now, Charizard's getting all the love in the world. So the next thing we always talk about is this, and this is kind of my own little graph. And I started this obviously back in December of 2022 when I started doing this, and I'll tell you my thought process behind this. So on the right-hand side, you have PSA grades by category, and you see at the top, every single month TCG is up there. TCG dominates everything else. But the reason I think that this is really cool to keep an eye on is because I take baseball, basketball, and football. I call them ball sports. I should change the name of that and think of something more creative. But I always compare the number of TCG cards that are graded to those big 3 ball sports, and I lump those together. And if you'll look in the graph down below, right, the orange line represents the ball sports, the blue represents the TCG cards graded. I mean, it's been a heavyweight bout. They've been going back and forth for over a year and a half at this point, right? It has been neck and neck up until January of this year. Then we see ball sports absolutely take off, and we see Pokemon absolutely nosedive. Now, from March to April, we see both of them nosedive at the same direction, right? You see ball sports takes that hard downward to the right, and the TCG space continues down and to the right. But that gap is something that is not encouraging to me. I have this long-term theory, and again, I'm in this market for 5, 10, 15 years, but I have a theory that further down the road, the TCG grading volume is going to be way higher and above the 3 big ball sports, because I think TCG is just going to be more popular as a whole. I think it appeals to a wider audience. I think it's more global. I can make a whole video on why I think TCG is going to overtake ball sports in terms of in the collecting hobby. So I am keeping an eye on this. Again, 3 months doesn't really freak me out too much. There's a lot of external things going on right now we're at the beginning of Scarlet and Violet era. I'm sure when we get into the next couple years of Scarlet and Violet, we're going to see this number pop back up. But it was something I wanted to call out. It's something that certainly has got my attention. Now, the next thing that we look at is the most graded subjects. And this list can be a little boring, but guess what? Pikachu was #1 for a long, long time. 3 months ago, Charizard finally regained the top spot. Last month, he was there again, and as, no surprise, right? We saw 5 of the most graded cards are Charizard. Charizard remains #1, so I think the Thunder Lizard, the Fire Lizard, has gone ahead and retained that spot. Now, one of the cool things is the Monkey D. Luffy, right? I was talking about One Piece, and it's exciting to see Monkey hold on to that #4 spot. When he first popped on this list, I thought it might be a flash in the pan, and then 2 months I was like, well, One Piece is still hot, so that makes sense again. But holding the #4 spot here for 3 months in a row, that means a lot. That means that I think they're there to stay, which is really exciting. Now, the Nami card down there, Nami has kind of fallen off. I think she was up at #11, and now she's fallen off to #12, so she might not be able to hang on, but overall, this list doesn't change too much. Now, we did see Zapdos drop off, and we did say Rayquaza come back on, and again, there's a lot of awesome Rayquaza cards here at the end of the Sword and Shield block, and I think a lot of people have realized that there are some undervalued Rayquaza cards. I think people are picking them up, sending them in to get them graded, so I think that's why we see that on there. And again, when you talk about cards that are hot here in the Sword and Shield block, right, Umbreon is the big dog because it's the big chase card, and I think that excitement, I think that allure kind of flows through to all the other cards. So you have the character name right there, you have the total graded in the column to the right, and you see the growth versus March 2024, right? So the growth month over month for these individual characters, it is red top to bottom except for Umbreon, right? Umbreon is actually up month over month, and that tells me that there is a ton of excitement in the Umbreon space. I feel like it's coming from Sword and Shield. I feel like those cards are ripe for the taking. I mean, there's still some in the $20, $30 range from sets like Brilliant Stars, and I just think that they have a very bright future ahead of them, and the market sure shows that there's a lot of interest in it right now. Just another one of the really cool takeaways that I take when I do this video. So the next thing we're going to talk about right here is a slide I always say to take with a giant grain of salt, right? This is gem rates by era for the different companies, and it's broken down into the sports side, it's broken down into the TCG side. Now, what was really interesting to me was last month we saw the overall gem rates by era, almost all of the modern ones. So the 2020 area right there, you see that in PSA TCG, the 2020s is at 71.7%. That number shot up significantly across all the different grading companies. Now, what happened? We talked about how the earlier Scarlet and Violet sets, the gem rates were so low. Well, now these newer sets that are coming out, really everything past Pokemon 151, we're starting to see a 50, 55, 60% gem rate. Like whatever the quality issues were that they were having with those original sets, they seem to have figured it out at the Pokemon company, and the quality is much higher. So I think we're going to start seeing these gem rates going up. And I will tell you, one of the reasons I'm so bullish on some of those early Scarlet and Violet sets is because the gem rates are so low, is because that the print quality was a little bit down. People are going to be hunting for gem mint copies of all of these awesome cards from the beginning of Scarlet and Violet, and they're going to be few and far between and hard to find. Now, the other thing I always tell everybody about this slide is grade with the company you like. Don't take this information and say, oh, well, I need to grade with Beckett TCG because they got an 84.4% gem rate. Well, guess what? People send the best of the best there because they're trying to get black labels, and don't say, well, I'm not going to grade with SGC because they have the lowest gem rate. Grade with the company that you like. Send in your best quality cards and grade with the company that you like. I like PSA, but I know a lot of people like these other brands too, so I think this is really cool for us to talk about. Now, this is the one where I'm getting a little bit of, I don't say unease, but it's just something that I really want to keep an eye on here. So you look, this is the TCG cards graded by month at PSA starting in January of 2022. And remember, at the beginning of this video, I told you that the trend is fundamentally changing. And this is why. You look January, February, March of 2022, up, up, up. And then there was some anomaly. I don't remember what happened in April of 2022, but it literally drops off a cliff, right? But then when you look at January, February, March, April of 2023, up, 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 up again, right? But then when you look at January, February, March, April of 2024, down, 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 right? The trend is fundamentally different than the two previous years. Again, is it a bad thing? Is it a good thing? Right now, I think it's just a thing. This is the first time we've been looking at this information while going through the beginning of a brand new Pokemon era. Pokemon, at the end of the day, even though One Piece is showing a lot of love, even though a lot of people are interested in it, Pokemon still reigns supreme. And these overall huge numbers are going to go the direction that Pokemon does. So guess what? We had a little bit of a rough couple months. Let's see what happens in the months ahead and see if it finds a way to rebound, because that's what I'm really going to be keeping an eye on. And the final one right here is, I always say this, and I hope everybody aligns with me. Whether it's football, basketball, baseball, hockey, UFC, soccer, Pokemon, One Piece, whatever out there, a strong card market is good for all of us. I want people out there to find collectibles, and cards in particular have a great opportunity for long-term price appreciation. So I always finish with this slide, which really just sums up the overall grading volume at PSA. Now, you'll see that last month, you see that real high green line. Again, as I said, it was an absolute record month for PSA, highest month they've ever had. This month it came back down a little bit to earth, but overall it is still up. It's still looking relatively good. I mean, last month they graded 40,386 cards per day. There is no illusion that people are turning away from cards. There's no illusion that people are stopping grading, and I think this is good. This might just be Pokemon's turn to kind of be in the barrel and take a little bit of a kick in the shorts here for a little bit until we get some of these bigger sets that roll out. You know, 151 is absolutely epic, but one set will not carry an entire grading month. But listen, as I always say, don't let short-term price, price fluctuations talk you in or out of making a great purchase. You know what you're doing. You know what's going on in that big, beautiful Pokemon brain of yours. So you always collect and invest in what makes you happy and what you think you have the most faith in. So listen, if you made it to the end of this video, if you enjoyed this type of content, hit that subscribe button. If you have questions or comments, drop them down below. And as always, if you like what you see, give us a big old thumbs up. Those 3 small things go a long way in helping my small channel out, and I really appreciate it. You guys have an epic one. I can't thank you enough for watching, and I'll be talking to you soon. See you, everybody. Bye.